My ex exposed our Sexcapade in an Erotic Bestseller. And now I'm trending. Shit. This book is about me. I had been reading this book for an hour now, but even if I wasn't halfway near the end, the realization dangled over me. The book I was reading, Loving N, was about me. Yesterday at work, I was halfway through editing a manuscript when I caught Sarah from Acquisition stealing another glance at me. The third one today. Something on my face, I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She startled, cheeks flushing. No, sorry, it's just... I finished this book last night. She pulled Loving N from her bag. There's this scene where N organizes his desk with color-coded sticky notes and rearranges his pens by height, and my stomach dropped. That specific organizational habit was something I developed after my parents' divorce. A small way to control my environment when everything else felt chaotic. Lots of editors are particular about organization, I said carefully. She nodded, but her eyes lingered a second too long. Of course, it's just... uncanny, that's all. I might be overanalyzing. By the way, you should also read this book, Loving N. It is amazing and is getting viral on all social media platforms. It's worth the hype. She continued before going back to her work. Curiosity was a beast I had never been able to fight with, and so on my way back home, I decided to get a copy of Loving N. Sitting now on my couch, my hands trembled as I realized that the book was actually about me, and fun fact, the author of this book might be anonymous for the world, but for me, River Madden once used to be my world. The way River had described my habit of nervously pushing my glasses up my nose when I was trying to flirt, or when we used to share whispered secrets while lying on top of each other, all of it, every part of me, was out there in the public. This wasn't enough. I couldn't believe something like this could happen to me. I decided to scroll the internet, finding answers and hype about this book. A frantic search led me to an online excerpt. I clicked, scanned, and felt the ground drop out from under me. The internet was going viral with hashtags like #FindN, #WhoIsN, #FindRiverMadden, #BookTalk. And the craziest part? There was a scribbled note at the end of the book with the words, "To the love of my life, my N." This was enough for me to know why people were going crazy for this book. Their obsession with finding N, the real N, made sense. River hadn't just written a book. He'd stolen my life, my privacy, myself, and sold it. And the worst part? A part of me felt a flicker of something else. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't forgotten. He'd been obsessed. But the cost was my dignity, and now the internet scrutinized it. How could he turn something that felt sacred between us into cheap entertainment? And more importantly, where was he? After a few days, I was still angry when I reached my work after the weekend, the violation still fresh in my mind. At work, I was an editor at a small publishing house, but after that book had been published, I felt eyes on me. Whispers seemed to follow me to the coffee machine. Was it paranoia? Or did Sarah give me a knowing look that day when I adjusted my glasses during the morning meeting? Probably not. But the possibility was enough to make my skin crawl. I couldn't just let this lie. I needed answers. I needed to confront him. Finding River, however, wasn't easy. He'd always been good at disappearing. Our breakup had been abrupt, painful, and followed by his complete vanishing act. No forwarding address, disconnected number, and deleted social media. But now, thanks to the breadcrumbs left by #FindRiverMadden and a bit of my own obsessive internet sleuthing, I found a lead. A trendy, dimly lit cocktail bar in Brooklyn. River M, bartender. It had to be him. I was willing to take the risk, just a sliver of hope that I might find him. I rehearsed speeches in my head, alternating between cold anger and scathing accusations. How dare he? Did our time together mean so little that he could use it for content? Did I mean so little? The bar was exactly the kind of place River would gravitate towards. And there he was, behind the counter pouring a drink with grace that was achingly familiar. He looked different. Still unfairly beautiful, dark hair slightly longer falling over his forehead. But the bright spark that had always drawn people to him was muted, replaced by a sadness clinging to him. He looked up as I approached, his eyes, the same ones that used to hold galaxies when he looked at me, widening almost imperceptibly. Recognition flickered, followed by something unreadable. Resignation? Fear? Maybe even a flicker of that old warmth that used to melt my defenses. "Noah," he said, his voice low, rougher than I remembered, yet still sending an unwanted shiver down my spine. He didn't sound surprised. It was as if he'd been expecting me. My anger faltered. Seeing him standing there after 2 years of absence knocked the wind out of me, before the betrayal surged back. The air crackled with unspoken history. "River," I managed, my voice tight. Or should I say River Madden? I slid a copy of Loving End, which I'd bought with gritted teeth, onto the counter between us. Its minimalist cover felt like an accusation, stark against the wood. He didn't flinch. He looked down at the book, then back at me, his gaze steady, though I could see a muscle jump in his jaw. There was no denial, no attempt to deflect. "You found it." "Found it?" My voice rose, attracting the attention of a couple at the end of the bar. I lowered it, leaning closer, fury coiling in my gut, mixed sickeningly with the remembered scent of his skin. He wiped down the counter with slow, deliberate movements, his knuckles white. "Every word in that book is true, Noah," he said, his voice still quiet, but with an undercurrent of something that sounded unnervingly like pride or maybe desperation. "I wrote it because I couldn't stop thinking about you. About us. You had no right, River," I repeated. "You took something private, something ours. Our jokes, our fights, the way I used to fall asleep with my hand on your chest, and made it public property," I said. He didn't argue the point. He just watched me, that familiar blend of intensity and newfound melancholy in his eyes. "I know," he said, staring into his mug as if it held answers. "I know I shouldn't have. I mean, not like that." He sighed, rubbing his temples, a gesture I remembered comforting countless times. "It wasn't supposed to be published, Noah, not really." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. A sliver of unwanted hope pierced through my defenses. "It has your name on it. It's a bestseller." "It started as," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, forcing me to lean closer. "After I left, everything felt wrong. Empty. I couldn't figure out how to exist without us. Our rhythm." He finally looked up, his gaze meeting mine, raw and vulnerable, stripping away the bartender persona and revealing the man I remembered falling for. "So I started writing. Trying to understand where it went wrong, trying to hold on to the good parts, trying to hold on to you." His eyes held mine, pleading. "I wrote it all down. I wrote you down. Every single stupid, beautiful thing." "Tell me why you left," I finally asked. The question had been festering since I'd first seen the book. "I was offered a job in London. A big opportunity. I convinced myself you wouldn't want to uproot your life for me." He swallowed hard. "But the truth is, I was terrified of how much I needed you. How completely I'd fallen. So I ran." "The job fell through 2 months later," he continued, "but by then I was too ashamed to come back. Too afraid you'd moved on." River explained that the manuscript was intensely personal, almost like a diary poured out in desperation. He shared it with one friend, Liam, someone he trusted, seeking feedback or maybe just a connection in his isolation. Liam, apparently seeing dollar signs instead of heartbreak, had leaked it to a small, hungry publisher known for taking risks. "By the time I found out," River continued, shame coloring his cheeks, "it was already gaining traction online. Liam swore it was an accident, a misunderstanding with the publisher. And then it just blew up. #BookTalk happened." He shrugged, a gesture of helplessness that didn't quite mask the flicker of something else. Pride? Validation? I won't lie, Noah. A part of me liked it. Liked that people connected with it. With us. Even a fictionalized version. It felt like proof that what we had was real, unforgettable. His hand reached across the table, as if wanting to reach across the small space between us. But it was never meant to hurt you. It was meant for me, to survive. He finally looked me straight in the eye, his gaze unwavering. "I am truly sorry, Noah. For the leak, for the exposure, for not talking to you first. It was selfish and cowardly. I panicked, and I hid." My breath hitched, the weight of everything crashing over me. "You don't get to miss me, River. Not like this." His jaw tightened, but he stepped around the counter anyway, slowly, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Maybe he was. Maybe we both were. I never stopped, he murmured, standing too close. Not really. I hated that I didn't move away. Hated how the heat between us still flared, reckless and familiar. His fingers brushed mine, tentative, testing. I should go, I said, but I didn't. Instead, I looked up, and he leaned in, forehead barely resting against mine. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just breathing the same breath, eyes closed like the closeness might explain everything words couldn't. For a brief second, in the quiet before the next crash, we stood in the eye of it, together. And then, the explosion happened as he placed a kiss on my lips. A small one before it erupted, as we both stood looking at each other, panting and breathing heavily. 2 days later. 2 days after confronting River at the bar, I still couldn't shake whatever had happened that day. The mixture of regret and longing that mirrored my own conflicted feelings. My phone buzzed with another notification. #WhoIsN was trending again, this time with a theory that I was a composite character inspired by several of River's exes. If only they knew. The buzzing continued, a call this time. River's name lit up my screen, sending my pulse racing despite my better judgment. I was wondering, his voice came through, hesitant but warm, if we could talk. Properly. Maybe coffee? Every logical part of me screamed to decline, but the flutter in my chest had other ideas. The cafe on West 4th, I said. Tomorrow at 3? The hope in his voice was palpable. Fine. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The next day. The cafe on West 4th was neutral territory, a place neither of us had frequented during our relationship. I arrived early, choosing a corner table with my back to the wall, a defensive position I recognized even as I took it. When River walked in, shaking raindrops from his coat, I felt that familiar flutter I'd spent 2 years trying to forget. He spotted me immediately, as if drawn by some invisible thread. You came, he said, sliding into the seat across from me, relief evident in his voice. I said I would. He ordered a black coffee, the same as always, while I nursed my cappuccino. The silence stretched between us until he reached into his pocket and placed something small on the table. A movie ticket stub, faded, creased, but unmistakable. You kept it, I said, unable to hide my surprise. He nodded. Our first date, Casablanca at that revival theater on 8th. I remembered it vividly. How nervous I'd been, how he'd reached for my hand during As Time Goes By, how we'd quoted the film all the way home. I've kept everything, he admitted quietly. Ticket stubs, birthday cards, even that ridiculous caricature from Coney Island. Something in my chest loosened slightly. Not forgiveness, but understanding. He hadn't just written me down. He'd preserved me, collected the physical remnants of us like precious artifacts. Why are you showing me this? Because I need you to know it wasn't just material for a book, Noah. It is my life. The best part of it. I didn't touch the ticket stub, but I didn't leave either. His eyes met mine, 1,000 unspoken words passing between us. He reached across the table, his hand palm up, an offering, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his. A few days later, I need to pick up a reference book, I told River during one of our coffee meetings. 5 weeks had passed since our confrontation at the bar, and something like friendship had begun to form in the ruins of our relationship. Mind if I come along? I've got nothing until my shift starts. The bookstore was crowded, narrow aisles forcing us to brush against each other as we navigated the stacks. I reached for a book on the top shelf, stretching unsuccessfully. Without a word, River stepped behind me, his chest pressing against my back as he easily retrieved the volume. Instead of moving away, he stayed there, his breath warm against my ear. This reminds me of your apartment, he murmured. How you always insisted on shelving the classics on the top shelf even though you couldn't reach them. I liked watching you get them down, I admitted before I could stop myself. He chuckled, the sound vibrating through his chest into my back. I know. You'd pretend to need Austin at least once a week. I turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close we were standing, of how familiar his scent was. I miss this, he whispered. The little things. The way you bite your lip when you're thinking. The way you always touch a book's spine before opening it. You noticed all that? I noticed everything about you, Noah. I still do. In the quiet sanctuary of the stacks, surrounded by thousands of stories, I felt our own narrative shifting, rewriting itself page by page. Another week later. The anonymous tip came exactly 1 month after I'd first confronted River. Exclusive. Is this the real N from viral hit Loving N? The headline screamed across my screen, followed by details that left no room for ambiguity. My name, my workplace, my street name, even that terrible photo from the publishing house website where I looked like I was being held hostage rather than posing professionally. My phone exploded with notifications. Colleagues, acquaintances, even my dentist, all suddenly connecting dots they'd only vaguely suspected before. Noah, is this true? My boss's email arrived moments later. We need to discuss potential PR implications. Within hours, my carefully constructed anonymity was obliterated. The speculation that had been limited to a few observant colleagues became public knowledge, confirmed by sources close to the author. That night, River called, his voice tight with concern and anger. Noah, I'm so sorry. It was Liam. He sold the information to that gossip blog for a 5-figure sum. The same Liam who accidentally leaked your manuscript? I asked bitterly. Yes, I confronted him. He's not even denying it anymore. Says we should be grateful for the publicity. River's disgust was evident. I've cut him out completely, but the damage is done, I finished, watching another dozen notifications light up my phone. Everything's changed now, hasn't it? It was overwhelming, suffocating. I wanted to scream at River, to blame him entirely for this circus. And yet, I couldn't fully hate him for it. The book captured something true. The moments of pure connection, the way we fit together perfectly, physically and emotionally, if only for a little while. Reading those passages, even under the horrified gaze of the internet, stirred a longing I hadn't allowed myself to feel. A longing for his touch, his ridiculous movie quotes whispered in the dark, the feeling of being utterly known. The book was a betrayal, yes, but it was a time capsule of love I was terrified to admit I missed more than my own privacy. After a few weeks, the night River brought me the sequel manuscript, I hadn't planned to invite him in. But the rain was coming down in sheets, and he looked so vulnerable standing there, water dripping from his hair. Just until the rain lets up, I said, stepping aside. He sat awkwardly on my couch, the same one where we'd spent countless evenings tangled together, while I made tea. You don't have to read it now, he said, nodding at the manuscript he'd brought. It's not going anywhere. Neither are you in this downpour. An uncomfortable silence settled between us. Then, almost simultaneously, we both spoke. Do you ever... We stopped, laughed awkwardly. You first, I offered. River took a deep breath. I was going to ask if you ever think about that weekend in the Catskills, the cabin. I did. It had been perfect. No internet, no distractions, just us. We'd hiked during the day and made love by the fireplace at night. I'd never felt so connected to another person. Sometimes, I admitted. He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. Remember how we tried to cook trout on that ancient stove? And set off the smoke alarm, I finished, finding myself smiling too. We had to eat peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. Best meal of my life, he said softly. Our eyes met across the coffee table, and for a moment I could see it all. The past we'd shared, the pain of separation, and perhaps, just maybe, a future neither of us had dared imagine. Stay, I said suddenly. Read with me. And so we sat, side by side on the couch, the manuscript open between us, reading together the words he'd written about us. When I reached the part where he described our last fight, tears slipped down my cheeks. Without a word, River gently wiped them away, his touch of balm on the wound he'd both inflicted and was now trying to heal. We fell asleep like that, the manuscript between us, not touching except for his hand resting lightly over mine. A bridge across the chasm of our past. The next day, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet humming. For a disorienting moment, it felt like the past 2 years had been a bad dream, that River had never left, that we'd never broken up. Reality reasserted itself as I entered the kitchen. River stood at the stove, making pancakes, his back to me. He'd always been the cook between us. You remembered where everything is, I observed. He turned, a soft smile on his face. Some things you don't forget. He'd made the pancakes the way I liked them, slightly crisp around the edges with blueberries. A peace offering in batter form. I hope it's okay that I stayed, he said, suddenly uncertain. I didn't want to wake you. It's okay, I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. We ate at my small kitchen table, the morning light casting a golden glow over everything. It felt domestic, fragile, and precious. I'd like to take you somewhere, River said as he washed our plates, if you're willing. Where? It's a surprise, but it's important. Curiosity won out over caution. Okay. He drove us to a small park I didn't recognize, leading me to a bench overlooking a pond. It seemed ordinary, unremarkable. This is where I came, he said quietly after I left. Every day for a month, trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. I looked around with new eyes, imagining him sitting here, torturing himself with thoughts of me. I started writing the book here, he continued. Not for publication, not for anyone but myself, just to keep you close somehow. He reached for my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. I know I hurt you, Noah. I know I betrayed your trust, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. Not yet. I'm just asking for a chance to show you who I am now, to see if there's anything left worth saving. In that moment, with the morning sun warming our faces and our hands intertwined, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly, but the possibility of it. The first tentative step toward a future neither of us had dared to hope for. One day at a time, I said, squeezing his hand. We'll see where it leads. His smile, grateful, hopeful, tinged with wonder, was like watching the sun break through clouds after a long storm. The next day, River had gone back to his place last night, said he had his shift. Finally, this fragile realization of us being something again was just starting to settle within me when my phone buzzed with a news alert. My blood ran cold as I read the headline. Exclusive. River Madden, author of #BookTalk sensation Loving N, Unmasked. Reclusive bartender behind viral hit. The article detailed River's life, his bartending job, his quiet Brooklyn existence, all against the explosive fame of his book. It included quotes from an insider source, Liam no doubt, that greedy bastard, clearly selling River out just as he'd sold out my privacy. The internet exploded again. This time the focus wasn't just on the mysterious N, but on the author himself. Fans were going crazy, reaching out to the bar where he worked, demanding autographs, selfies. Critics accused him of emotional exploitation, questioning the ethics of his work. The quiet life River had tried to build for himself was shattered, replaced by the relentless glare of the spotlight he'd inadvertently shone on me. He was facing the fallout alone, and suddenly the image of him standing weary behind that bar, trying to hold himself together, flashed in my mind. An unwelcome surge of protectiveness warred with my instinct to run. I had a choice. I could retreat, protect the remnants of my privacy, and extinguish the flickering hope ignited by his manuscript forever. Or I could step into the chaos with him, defend us, knowing it would cement my identity as N permanently, changing my life irrevocably. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, heavy and absolute. Could I face the world alongside the man who had exposed my deepest vulnerabilities to it? Could I risk everything for a love that had already broken me once? Looking at the manuscript lying open on my coffee table, remembering the raw honesty in its pages, the desperate plea in his words, I felt a terrifying courage bloom in my chest, fueled by the impossible hope that maybe, this time, our stars could align. After a few days, the public exposure created an unexpected shift. With my privacy already violated, the anger I directed at River partially redirected toward Liam and the media vultures circling us both. River became an unexpected ally in the chaos, fielding calls from reporters to protect me, warning me about photographers lurking near my building. 3 weeks after the leak, we found ourselves huddled in my apartment, blinds drawn, takeout containers scattered around us. I handed him a glass of wine. Your life is being invaded too. I deserve it, he said quietly. You don't. Maybe neither of us deserve this, I admitted, the realization selling something within me. Maybe we need to face it together. His eyes met mine, cautious hope flickering. Together? I nodded slowly. The sequel you wrote. It made me understand things differently. Not just about us, but about how stories can be reclaimed. What are you suggesting? That interview request from Cultural Quarterly, the one we both received. I took a deep breath. Maybe we should accept it. Tell our story on our terms. River studied me carefully. Are you sure? That would mean publicly acknowledging that I'm N? That we're whatever we are now? I reached for his hand, the first time I'd initiated contact since finding the book. I'm tired of hiding from a story that's already out there. Maybe it's time we wrote our own ending. His fingers intertwined with mine, tentative but warm. Not a full reconciliation yet, but a step towards something new. Something we were choosing together. The decision felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability. Hiding felt like cowardice, like abandoning not just River, but also the fragile truth the sequel had unearthed within me. Losing him again, this time by my own inaction, felt more terrifying than facing the public. A few days later, that's how we ended up agreeing to the interview. Not with the salacious gossip blogs, but a respected journalist known for nuanced cultural commentary. It felt like the only way to reclaim our narrative. Sitting side by side under the bright studio lights felt surreal, terrifying. I could feel River's tension beside me. As we waited for the cameras to roll, I felt River's knee brush against mine under the table. Not accidental. A brief, grounding touch that spoke volumes. I took a deep breath, meeting the interviewer's gaze. "Mr. Vale," she began gently, "this book, Loving In, has clearly depicted incredibly personal aspects of your life and relationship. How did that feel?" "Honestly," I said, my voice surprisingly clear, "at first it felt like a profound violation. I was furious, hurt, confused." I glanced at River, saw him watching me, his expression a mixture of pained acceptance and something softer, like gratitude. But, I continued, turning back to the interviewer, it also forced me to confront things I'd buried. My own fears about intimacy, about being truly seen, flaws and all. Reading it, as painful as it was also strangely illuminating. It reminded me of things I tried hard to forget. Good things. The intensity of what we shared. The interviewer turned to River. "Mr. Madden, you faced criticism regarding the ethics of using such personal material. How do you respond?" River leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "There's no excuse for publishing Noah's story, our story, without his explicit permission," he stated, his voice resonating with sincerity I now believed. "Writing it began as a personal, private act of processing grief and love. Its publication, fueled initially by a betrayal of trust by a friend, and then by my own passive acceptance of the ensuing fame, was a mistake. It exploited Noah's vulnerability, and for that, I am deeply, unequivocally sorry." He looked directly at the camera, then turned to me, his gaze locking with mine, conveying more than words could. I broke his trust, and the public's fascination doesn't negate that. I've promised Noah I will never write about him, about us, again, unless he is a willing and active partner in the process. His words landed squarely in my chest, easing a tightness I hadn't realized I was holding. We talked more, about the complexities of love, loss, forgiveness, and the strange beast of internet fame. We didn't shy away from the messiness, the hurt. We owned it. By the end, I felt strangely calm, lighter. As we left the studio, River's hand found mine, his grip tentative but sure. The interview, predictably, went viral. Opinions were divided. Some lauded our honesty, others condemned River, and some probably still thought I was an idiot for forgiving him. But huddled together on my sofa later that night, scrolling through the reactions, a quiet sense of solidarity settled between us. We had faced the storm together, spoken our truth, and found our way back to something fragile but real. This time, it would be on our terms. No secrets, no hidden manuscripts, just honesty. His shoulder pressed against mine, a simple contact that felt like coming home. After a few weeks, the initial media frenzy having subsided into a low hum, we ventured out. We walked hand in hand through the crowded aisles of the Strand bookstore, a place we used to frequent in the before times, arguing playfully over authors. His fingers laced through mine, a simple gesture that felt monumental after everything. And there it was, a huge display for Loving In, complete with River's newly famous author photo and pull quotes praising the raw emotion. Our eyes met over the display, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity and the reality of it all. It felt strange seeing it there, a monument to our past pain and present reconciliation. As we passed, a young woman browsing nearby gasped softly. Her eyes darted between the display and us. "Oh my God," she whispered, clutching her own copy of the book. "Are you two?" River squeezed my hand. I looked at him, saw the quiet hope mixed with nervousness in his eyes, and felt a sigh of confidence, of acceptance. I turned back to the fan, a small, genuine smile finally reaching my lips. "Yeah," I said, the word feeling solid, real, a reclaiming of the narrative, but more importantly, a reclaiming of us. We are. After a month. A month after the interview aired, River and I sat in my living room, his laptop open between us, displaying an email from his publisher. They want to publish the sequel, he said, voice carefully neutral, but in a fictional way. I stared at the screen, conflicted. I thought that manuscript was just for me. It was, River assured me quickly. It still is, if that's what you want. I told him I wouldn't even consider it without your full partnership and approval. I considered it, tracing patterns on the couch cushion between us. If we did this, and that's a big if, I'd want complete editorial control. Nothing goes in that book that I'm not comfortable sharing. River nodded earnestly. Absolutely, equal partners in every decision. And proceeds would go to privacy rights organizations, I added. I don't want to profit from this. Done. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. I never thought I'd consider this. But maybe there's value in telling our story completely. River's hand found mine, his touch now familiar again after weeks of careful reconnection. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I squeezed his hand, the decision crystallizing. Let's do it. But we rewrite it together. Every word. Rain tapped gently against the glass, a soft counterpoint to the quiet intimacy inside my apartment. River was there, curled up on the sofa beside me, his head resting on my shoulder, the familiar weight both comforting and anchoring. His arm draped possessively around my waist, a silent claim I welcomed, his thumbs stroking softly against my side. Between us rests his laptop, open to a blank document save for a few typed lines. He was working on the manuscript, but this time, it was entirely fictional. He looked up at me, a question in his eyes, a hint of the old playful spark returning. I nod, leaning closer, my cheek brushing against his hair, inhaling the soft scent of sandalwood and rain. Together, our fingers hover over the keyboard, then press the keys. Each word a promise, typed not just onto the screen, but into the quiet space between us. Slowly, deliberately, we type the words to feel like the only ones that matter now, the closing lines to one chapter and the hopeful beginning of another. On the first page, he wrote the dedication. For Noah, my muse, my beginning, middle, and always. The end. What is your crazy bookish fantasy? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome!